Hey folks, just wanted to do a quick follow-up to a video that we made a few months back for the Sega Saturn Mode, the multi-optical disc emulator that we installed. Now, as you recall from our last video, we installed a 1TB Samsung SSD and loaded the entire Sega Saturn library on there. So let's go ahead and check out some of the features that the mode provides. I'm just going to turn on the Saturn here. And just a quick setup review while this is booting. The Saturn is connected through our RGB cable that we have through the Retrofit 5X over there. That's upscaling the image from 240p and 480i over to 1080p and outputting it over to this Elgato 4K 60S Plus. Now we're capturing here in 1080p just because the output resolution of both kind of jives more or less at 1080p. There's currently firmware loaded on the Retrofit to do 4K output, but it's still experimental, so just wanted to do this kind of on a fully fleshed out version of 1080p upscaling on the Retrofit. All right, now as you can see here, the mode boots into the first directory in the hard drive. And so I have this laid out kind of by territory of titles. So we have titles from Europe, titles from Japan, and titles from the USA. We also have a folder for fan translations. This includes hacked ROMs and so forth, where we take maybe a Japanese game and port in a English translation, either fan-based or imported from a different console, and then built back into that game. And then also some improvement hacks, as we mentioned in the original video, games that would utilize the 4MB RAM card, for example, for King of the Fighters and Mortal Kombat, and a few other ones that are there too. But let's take a look at just some standard titles here, see how it runs. I'm going to pop into just the USA category, and within the mode itself, the primary listing is kind of like a file list like this, kind of like you would have on a PC. If you hit your C button for options, you can actually switch this over to cover listing, where we're pulling from a games database file located on the hard drive, and it's going to pull up some image artwork for the games, as well as let's see, I'll just pull up Albert Odyssey here, as well as some reviews of what the game is all about, a quick synopsis, some information about the title and so forth, and a few screenshots. I tend not to do this because on the Sega Saturn, the bus speed is limited to 2x CD-ROM speed. So as it's pulling in these images, the loading is pretty slow, as you see here. It's nice that you get this extra information, for example, on just games like this. It kind of tells you a little bit of the background information here. But it's a little slow in loading, so for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to switch back to list. And it's a little bit quicker to kind of scroll through these as well. Within the mode, you can toggle with the L and R buttons on the controller. You can switch between different genres. As you see up there under the mode logo, we have a filtering on action games. These are all the games that are listed in the games database as action games. Another toggle makes it go switch to adventure games, compilation games, racing, puzzle games, RPGs, shooting, simulation, sports, fighting, all sorts of different stuff, right? So we're going to just kind of stick with all games for now, so we have a complete list. So let's go ahead and fire up a game. Let's fire up, I don't know, well, let's do a game that has multiple CDs. Let's just see how that works, for example. D is a good example here. Now, the way that the mode handles this is more or less like a music playlist. You can add games to a playlist file and then have it load from there, or you can throw all your ISO images into the single folder that is listed here in the list. And then mode is intelligent enough to scan through those and identify ISOs that are titled Disk 1 or CD 1, Disk 2, CD 2, and so forth. So when you click on it, it'll ask you what starting disk you want to have. D2 is a good D is a good example because it's a simple 2-disc game, and you cannot boot from the second disk. This second disk is really just a continuation. You must boot from the first disk. So if I start it here at disk 2, I'm just going to click on A button. It'll fire up the title. And it should pop up with a message. Yep, there it is. This is disk 2. Please insert disk 1 to play. So how we do this is pretty simple. Three ways actually, two of which I can demonstrate here. The first way is if you have enabled this option in the mode, all you have to do is simply open the CD lid and then close it again. and that triggers the disk change feature within the mode to switch the disk. The second option, which I prefer because sometimes you want to open this to access the SD card and not have to worry about it rebooting the system or switching disks, you can simply press one of the function buttons on the mode. In this case, this is called button number 2. The 3D printed laser bearer housing that we have here for the SD card reader has this as an extension up here, so you can access buttons 2 and 1. So we're just going to hit button 2, which is the disk switch button, and it's going to load up disk 1. Now again, disk 1 is the boot disk for this game, so it's going to go through the whole boot sequence here and load into the title screen for D2, or rather for D. So there it is, it's loading right here. And here's the opening logo for D. All right. Now if I press the disk switch button again, it'll simply instruct the mode to start loading the second ISO or the next ISO in the playlist sequentially. So if I hit this button again, it's going to pop up saying, if I start it up here, that we are loading with disk 2 and we need to load disk 1 to run the game. So there we go. It's as simple as that. Okay, let's try something different. We want to make sure that the mode is compatible with certain titles that required specific Sega Saturn hardware, specifically the video CD card. As you recall from our installation video, this Sega Saturn is outfitted with the VCD adapter in the back. And in Japan, there were a handful of games that were released that took advantage of the VCD card to be able to provide FMV using MPEG-1 codec, which allows it to do full screen video as a video CD would, and not have the hyper-compressed, hyper-pixelated true motion video that was part of the Sega Saturn libraries for FMV. One prime example is Lunar Silver Star Story Complete, which actually refuses to boot if it doesn't detect the VCD card. As you recall from certain emulation videos that we've done in the past, only specific emulators are designed to even look for the VCD card and provide support for that. So even on the PC, it's really hard to kind of find compatibility for this. So let's see how the mode fares in this case. I'm going to load up Lunar here. Let me see, Lunar. All right. So Lunar had several releases in Japan. You had the standard non-VCD version, and then you had Silver Star Story Complete, which is the VCD version. Now this is different than the version that was released in the US and also on PlayStation. PlayStation had its own built-in hardware MJPEG support, while the Sega Saturn initially has just standard software support for decoding FMV. But the VCD version of Silver Star Story Complete actually is higher quality than everything that was released at that time. So let's load this up and see how we do here. Let's make sure it actually works. Now right around here, oh okay, it's complaining I don't have enough save space. That's okay. Let's just continue. Now right around here, it would start to bomb out and saying, oh, cannot find VCD card. So let's see what happens here. Looks like everything is loading. All right. So it looks like it is working with the VCD adapter, playing MPEG-1 videos. Now, because we're running through an upscaler and using a modern display here as a way to capture this, it is going to look pixelated. The Retrofit has options to implement scan lines and also other sorts of video tweaks to kind of get around this. So the way that this would have looked on a consumer television or even a PVM would have been kind of like this. And the scan lines really filter out all the pixelization for what we can now see on a modern display. So something like that is how it would have looked. We'll just turn it off for now. Alright, so it is booting, it is working, and so yes, it is compatible with that specific piece of hardware. Alright, one other thing to mention is that if you do want to do a reboot, there's a couple ways to do that, to go back to the mode main menu. Most Sega Saturn games allow you to do an in-game reset using A, B, C, and Start. If you hold those buttons down, it should bring you from wherever you are in the game back to the game title screen. And then if you press it again, it'll go to the Sega Saturn CD player. Now, instead of going to the Sega Saturn CD player, mode is configured to actually boot straight to mode. So let's see if that happens. There are some titles that are not compatible with this, but let's see if Lunar is a part of that. So I'm holding ABC, pressing Start, and let's see what happens here. Okay, maybe, yep, there it is. So we are booting back to mode. All right. A couple more tests I want to run through. I want to test other sorts of hardware compatibility with, say, like games that require the 4 MB RAM card. This is the Action Replay Forum Plus. This previously provided a capability to do multi-region games, as well as a memory card, a save game manager, a cheat menu. You can even do debugging through the parallel port that's installed in here, as well as a 4 MB and 1 MB RAM versions. So let's do that. I'm going to turn this off. We're going to insert this in there and fire it up. And hopefully we won't have to do a Nintendo blow on the cartridge trick to get this thing to boot, but let's see what happens here. Oh, looks like we are going to have to do that. All right, excuse me 1 second. Let's skip this. All right. So I'm just going to start up the game here. I think those of you who know the Saturn know where I'm going with this. And we are going to run one of the games that is compatible, also requires the 4 MB RAM expansion card. So let's load up X-Men versus Street Fighter. All right. So X-Men vs. Street Fighter is a fighting game from Capcom. It requires the 4 MB RAM card to work. And usually it bombs out right here if it can't detect the RAM card. Let's see what happens. There it is. Alright, we'll skip to this here. X-Men vs. Street Fighter, as well as a handful of other Capcom fighting games, and a few others as well from different manufacturers, required the 4 MB RAM card in order to work. This provides it more additional working memory to store larger character sprites, full animation, arcade perfect gameplay. We'll just load up some things here. Let's do Nash, Green.
Ready. Fight.
All right. Now I'm doing this with the hand controller, not the joystick, so it's going to take me a little while to get used to this. But yes, as you can see, it is totally working. In fact, oh, come on, get over here. All right. Sorry guys, I love this game. Alright, let me pause this. Okay, so that does work. Let me also do the ABC start, reset to main menu, and again another ABC start to reset to the mode. And I did press a button there, so I hope it doesn't go to the CD player. Okay. Lastly, let's test one of the fan translations. I do have a fan translations folder here on the SSD. That's nice and dandy, but we want to test another thing here. I'm going to press the Z button, and it's going to switch over to the SD card that we have loaded up in the housing inside. In the bottom right of the screen, you see where it says device card. That tells you that you're working from the SD card now. Let's go in the fan translations folder and load up one of these games here. Let's do Shining Force is always an awesome game. Let's try that one here. So this gives you an idea of what it's like loading from SD card rather than hard drive. All right, let's see if it'll let me continue on without that. All right. Some of these games that are translations have hard-coded English subtitles in the FMVs. Others just have straight Japanese that they just kept from the original game, depending on how much effort has been done on the translation. Let me see if I can skip this. This is a fantastic game, by the way. If you've never played any of the Shining Force games, especially Shining Force CD on the Sega CD, and the Shining Force games on the Saturn, Scenarios 1, 2, 3, and the Premium Disc, is just amazing games. It's a shame they never got an official translation, but through the magic of all the people on the internet and all the hard work they've done, we now can play these games in full English. Alright, so I'm going to just begin a game here. And as you can see, of course, everything is translated into English. Let's see. Usually the Shining Force games allow you to name your character, just like Final Fantasy. So again, if you've never played any of the Shining Force games, definitely play them. They're awesome games. If you are into Final Fantasy, you'll find yourself right at home in these games. Alright, here's my team. Okay. So this works, this works, this works, this works. Okay. And again, if the screen is too pixelated for you, because we are scaling this up to 1080p from the original 240p or 480i image, you can also mess around with the with your video scaler. In this case, we're using the Retrofit 5X, again, just to kind of show this here. We are accepting a signal coming in from the SCART interface and upscaling that to 1080p. Looks like the original input signal is 263p. It's kind of an interesting resolution. And so here's where you can select your different output settings and so forth. Again, this is experimental firmware that we're using that does support 4K output, but it's still pretty experimental at this current point in time, so 1080p is the standard here. You can also mess around with different sorts of scaling options and video filters and all that good stuff, so it does do the job pretty well here for these old games. Let me actually just load up a filter just to give you an idea what that could look like here. So all that blockiness, all that pixelization just gets completely smoothed out here with this these filters. This is as though you were looking at a CRT monitor. Additionally, you can also do, these are post-processing filters, you can also do additional filters as well. Oops, that's where I was just now. Where is it? You can put it on soft. That kind of softens out the image. You can do it on, oops. You can set this up to sharp, which is the default, smooth, which basically applies a filter on it to kind of smooth out all the jaggies. Oops. I don't know what that guy's doing over there. Oh boy. But anyways, yeah, there's a whole bunch of different options here that's available with this this setup. So it's just an amazing time to go back to Saturn and do some great retro gaming here. All right. I'm going to do this back here again. But yeah, the Saturn had a fantastic library of games, a lot of which got overlooked because they never came stateside. Now, through the beauty of internet and fans translations and the ease of loading this onto real hardware, we can now go back and start to enjoy the stuff that we were left out on. Now, for as great as the mode is, unfortunately, there are a few low points that I need to point out. The first is that as of the making of this video, there is currently no way to access the hard drive's data once you have everything installed inside the unit. The only way to access the hard drive's data is to completely disassemble everything, remove the hard drive from the mode, plug the hard drive into a SATA USB adapter, and then plug the adapter into a PC and start copying over your data for things that are routinely updated. For example, patches to fan translations and so forth. To do that to a hard drive right now is very inconvenient. So the solution that most people do with mode is to put all that stuff onto an SD card and actually run the games from the SD card, which works perfectly fine. But if you wanted to utilize that hard drive, currently it's pretty inconvenient to put routine updates on the hard drive without having the capability to transfer files back and forth between the SD card and the hard drive. Perhaps this is something that could be addressed in a future firmware update or as a standalone software file manager tools disk for the Saturn. The second is cost. And while it's not the most expensive ODE solution for the Saturn as of the making of this video, mode is also far from the cheapest. And so really what it comes down to is whether or not you believe that the capabilities only offered in the mode is worth it over a competitor product. Keep in mind that no matter which ODE solution you choose, you're still going to have to contend with the cost of storage to store the Saturn's game library. Whether that be an SD card, a USB stick, mechanical hard drive, or as what we have in this Saturn, an SSD, all those costs are going to be sunk costs no matter which option you choose. For those who are looking for a lower cost ODE solution for the Saturn and are willing to forego the hard drive capabilities of the mode, the Fenrir is an affordable SD card based ODE product which offers similar functionality to the mode. Just make sure that you get an SD card with sufficient capacity to store as much Saturn games as you would like. 1 terabyte SD card is recommended for storing the entire Saturn library. On the opposite side of the spectrum, if you're looking for a complete plug-and-play ODE solution for the Saturn while still being able to keep your CD drive intact within the Saturn itself, the Satiator is the product for you. It's an SD card-based ODE product which plugs into the VCD port in the back of the Saturn and allows you to use that as an optical drive emulator. Unfortunately, because it does occupy the VCD port, games that utilize or require the VCD capabilities of the VCD card will not be able to function with a Satiator. But at a higher cost, you get the capabilities of keeping your CD drive intact and still being able to play games from disk as well as from SD card. And that is my review of the Sega Saturn mode. It does exactly what it says it does. It emulates the optical drive of the Sega Saturn absolutely perfect as far as I can tell. It's compatible with all original hardware, specifically the VCD card, which is very hard to find supportable in emulation even today. And it does it just as the original hardware would. And because we're all using ISOs and images that are loading from a hard drive as well as from an SSD, you never ever have to worry about any physical wear and tear on your optical disc. You can keep them nice and boxed up in your case, and never have to have that actually be on the Saturn playing. You also never have to worry about the laser getting old or needing to be replaced. Everything is working electronically from the internals of the SSD as well as from the SD card. All right, guys, that wraps it up for today. It's a definite must-buy in my opinion. Any retro gamer who is into Saturn or Dreamcast or any of the retro systems I'm sure you're familiar with any EverDrive type of flash cards or optical drive emulators such as this. If you don't already have one of these, definitely get them. For the Saturn, there's many different vendors and different product. One that's called Fenrir, one that's called Satiator, but my recommendation of choice is the mode for all the right reasons. It's compatible with all original hardware. You can load from hard drive as well as from SD card, and even from USB if you wanted to put that inside the Saturn shell. All right, folks, that wraps up for today. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.